Okay, how's everybody doing? So this will be part three then, the building up of the tree. I would have added this in. I sort of teased it in the last part, but I just didn't have the room to add it on it. I don't like to do long-winded videos, but you can't avoid them when you do tutorials and you want to explain things because otherwise you get swamped with questions. And if I don't try to cover everything initially, then it leaves people hanging. Even though I like questions because there always will be. But in this case, this will be the final part of this series for now. And then the actual truck finishing part, I'm probably going to do like in the beginning of next year. I'll tell you that right now. Because when this is done, I'm getting back onto River Road. Like that's the main thrust of this particular part of the journey right now. But this will cover areas that I've always emphasized about what separates out like an advanced modeler over like let's say a burgeoning modeler that's just getting into the hobby, or they're somewhere in between, or even advanced as well. There might be stuff they can learn here too. I don't know everything. Like I learn as I go. As I build things and make mistakes, I go, oh, okay. I don't want to do that again, or yeah, I want to repeat that. How do I repeat that? Because I like that. So this particular process can be done so many different ways. Like I have a lot of tree models under my belt, I'll admit, because I did them in film, did them in museum work. I didn't photograph a lot of that work because at the time you were way too busy and everyone took everything for granted. But this tree section, in this case the log for the AMT model, is a good example of how you can do trees really in any scale, but most notably probably O scale and up would be appropriate. Although you can pull some of this stuff off in HO scale as well. A lot of times when we look at trees in HO scale, they're actually way too small. But for somehow we've trained ourselves around the culture of traditional model railroading to just build them the way we do, right? But if you actually take like a real world scenario, like in my case where there's trees that are 200 years old, let's say, man, they're huge. Like if you put a locomotive up against them, but you don't see that reflected in model railroading. You'll see it in the ON3, like O scale logging. Like there's some outstanding layouts if you look for them on YouTube where guys have really, the trestle weaving through the old growth forest and stuff, just beautiful stuff. And I used to do a lot of dioramas where it was a shadow box. You never would see the top of the tree anyway. But what you would see is this. I did one time. I wish I would have photographed it more, but the client copyrighted everything. And there were trees actually larger than this in ON3 with this, little railroad snaking through the forest. And it was just really cool. It was called Cathedral. I'll try to dig up some photos in a dusty box I might have down the road, but when I resume the series in the spring. But like on this particular build, to show you. Anyway, so the process that I'm going to show you here can be done many different ways. You can carve the whole tree out of foam. You can carve it out of wood. You know, you could probably even 3D print a model like this in sections if you really wanted to. But anyway, I want to show you the process because I believe that the process really has a lot of value, like in terms of scenery and how we do things, like the philosophy behind this. And like I say, I just used what I had on hand. Like in a perfect world, you could pick everything the way you want, and you know, I would have done it this way, that way. Okay, fine, do it that way. But this is the way I did it because it involves a lot of the texture pastes that I'm going to show you that I think are invaluable to the model railroader. Okay. Okay, so I just want to talk to you a little bit about the tree construction for this log bunk trailer. And as you can see here, I have a piece of tube which is approximately 3 1/4 outer diameter. Now I have quite a few of these I picked up over the years from Kinko's or any printer supply. If you ask them, like they recycle these, or you know, they usually have stacks of them in the back. So I used to go by there once a week, and you know, when I used to use these for bigger dioramas for just sections, you know, like a window box, shadow box style, where you just see the trunk of the tree, you know, like this. And then these would go up a couple of feet or whatever because they're 3 feet long, and you'd be looking into these, you know, these big trees. And I would use celluclay for like Douglas fir because it rakes really good. It has a really nice Douglas fir kind of bark. But anyway, in this case, I'm doing a Western red cedar. So I have this section here, and it's going to be 36 scale feet long for the log trailer. They used to cut these 40 feet, 36 feet, 30 feet, 24, and so on. So just to balance out the load and to make it look, because I want it to look like a Titan, you know, a giant, right? And it's a 1 log load for the truck. So what I did was so there's quite a taper on these Western red cedars. Well, on any big tree near the butt there is, but I want to model that in as well. And what I used was thick chunks of balsa. This is all stuff that I have laying around, you know. And I glued on blocks or strips of balsa, and then I just knifed away some of the taper like this, and then I just took my little trusty plane here, my little Stanley plane, and I just, you know, tapered it down to the outside diameter of the tube, so it gave me a nice, you know, feathered transition there. All right. And now what I'm going to do with this is cover this. I want to seal this now with either like a type of water-based varathane or just about anything. Like I got a bunch of these kicking around. They were given to me. Kind of nice. This is just glass bead, but you know, I've already got one of these, and I don't like this stuff is, you know, I don't use a lot of it for projects, but it's a acrylic, a really solid acrylic medium. So I'm going to seal this tree with this, but you could use probably watered down glue or, you know, 100 different things to seal this with, just because it's all paper and balsa, and you want to do that if you're going to lay any other mediums on top of this. And then once I seal this tree, as you can see, I just glued cardboard on the top here. All right, there, that would be the butt cut, like where it was bucked. And I'll just trim and clean that up. And then I'm going to do the bottom here too and have some holes and some inner cavities because the cedars would tend to rot as well, like in the center. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to like apply this. I cut all this craft paper. Like Western red cedar has a really unique bark to it. I'll show you a pic. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I cut all these strips by hand, just tapered, you know, over a half an hour, and then I put them all in water and they shrunk a bit, and I let them dry. And then I'm going to soak them again, and I'm going to be laying them on, you know, just 3 or 4 at a time, but I'm just going to lay them on. It's going to be messy, but water soluble, friendly, and I'm going to lay it all on outside so I have this strandy bark, and then you know, like I'll be able to peel some of it because that's the way they look, these Western red cedars. They're this long stringy bark. You could actually grab a piece, you know, and just peel it all the way up, you know, 20 feet or whatever. So that's what I'm going to do with that, and then seal it up with a light coat of matte medium, and then I'll paint it. I'll take the airbrush to it and go at her and make a nice one log load for the logging truck. Okay, so let's talk about this tree and some of the layers I've put on it. And you can see here with the lighting, I'm just going to adjust it, see, so you can see the shadow. Like I want you to see the texture. If I have too much light, you can't see it, see? But there you can see it better. So as most of you know, this is just a tube, a 3 1/4 inch tube that you can get these, they're 3 feet long. Some of them are longer. They're from printing shops. They recycle them, right? They just get piled up in the back. If you go to a recycling store, you know, you can get these like Kinko's and stuff if they're still around. So that's what I used because I tried it on the log bunk. I want to do a one log load, and I thought, well, this is perfect for 1/25 scale for AMT log bunk peerless trailer. Okay. And then what I did was I capped the ends of the tube with, after I'd laid on this balsa wood, I capped it with cardboard and put a plug in there. Now you can plug the opening of this with foam if you want to, would be easier. And there's many ways to do the same thing here. I mean, in hindsight, I might have done that, but I decided that I just wanted to make some sort of witch hat cardboard holes here, you know, and then just glue those in and just model it that way. And I'm happy I did that because it looks pretty good. And I can model the inside actually. But you know, with foam, you could just carve that as well, and it would be pretty good, you know, once it was painted. So what I did was once I had this flared out and before any paint, I decided that, okay, I want to seal this up, and I happen to have an extra tub of glass bead gel here. I have an extra one, and it's been sitting around for a long time, so I wanted to use up, because these don't last forever. Like when you dip into them and they get half full, they get air in them, you know, even when you seal them, you know, and they turn like after a few years or whatever if you don't use them. So I decided to paint this whole tree with the glass bead, and I kind of like it. Like if you're doing a spruce, like a big spruce tree, then they have a nice texture. See here, as I turn it, you know, it's got a nice bark sort of texture, and you can see the balsa wood sealed with the gesso. I put the gesso on last, so on here. So I glass beaded it like that first, just stroked her down with a brush, and then after this dried, I painted it last night with Essential Gesso. This is another artist product, right? Really flat, white, you know, sort of thick, kind of nice paint, actually. They use it for canvases, right? And this is what I ended up with. But this morning when I looked at it, I thought, you know, this isn't really where I want it right now. Like maybe I wouldn't have used the glass bead in hindsight. But I learned something from that, though, right? I learned that if I do a different type of tree, then I will. But in this case, I want to create this type of strand bark that's very common to the western red cedar. And, you know, it looks like this, right? It has a very strandy texture to the bark. Okay, I'll show you a pic of that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is once I get this sorted out, because I want to smooth off some of these areas, because I'm going to lay some tape on here, like some similar strip, like masking tape, before I cover it with the bark and the Liquitex matte medium, like 50-50 mix, you know, to paint this strips on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay on a few strips of masking tape and then just fold over the tabs on the end here. And then when I lay on all the bark and the final coat, I'm just going to peel the tape off just so that it peels back some of the bark and you see the smooth wood surface. You know, that's very common to cedars when they get damaged, when they're dragged through the bush and skidded off the hills, you know, they get scarred up quite a bit. And then what I'm going to do is I have a whole bunch of strips here, and I'm just going to submerge these in water, because this will become instantly like wet noodles. It's a little starchy now, you know, which is fine, but when I soak this down, it'll be easier just to lay the strands on and stroke them onto the model here while I use them. I cover it and coat it with matte medium. It'll be messy, but it'll be fun. Okay, and then I'll revisit it from there. And then as you can see, you know, when I built the end of this model, I put a little bit of a flat spot on the bottom, but you can see how it's going to sit nice on the Peerless. Well, actually, it'll go this way. On the Peerless log bunk. Okay. And then when I work this end of the butt, since I'm here now, if you have a palette knife, you know, these are used for mixing colors, but they're also really great for sculpting this fiber paste as well. And you can see here what I did was like it's nice too for making some of the saw bar cuts. And then when I packed it into here, I was able to stab in and out and create some inner grain like in the rot. Like it's very common to old growth red cedars. They rot in the center like this. And then I was also able to, you know, cut in and pull and shape, you know, some of the, you know, the cut mark, you know, the holding wood that breaks off, you know, near the end of the final fell, right? Okay? And it's all golden products. And then there's this as well, open thinner. If you find it dries too fast, you can add a little bit of this golden open thinner. It's compatible with all their products. And what it does is it just slows the drying time, so it's more workable. Okay, so I used glass bead first over top of the cardboard. Then I used semi-opaque acrylic fiber paste. I didn't use any of this open thinner. And then I painted it over with essential gesso. So I get this nice painted, whited out model. And then I'm going to use this Liquitex. This is a bit cheaper stuff. 50/50 watered down. I'm going to use that to lay on the wet bark strips and then just brush over with matte medium. I'll see how that goes. Okay? Okay, so here's the barking process. So as you can see, I have this tray full of craft paper strips that I cut with a knife. It was a little bit of work, but you know, as they say, we get rewarded when we do the work, right? So what I do is I take a piece like this and I've just liquid matte medium. I've been soaking it down and I just lay the piece in like this. Just cover up the white, even if some of the white doesn't show. I'll have to do the one side and then let it dry and then do the others, but it's, you know, sometimes we look for the quick way out here, but you know, like I say, it's part of the sculpting process, right? And this is all paper, isn't it? It's all sculpting with paper products and all environmentally safe. It's really nice to work with, it really is. And then I can take these longer strips because they're sort of tapered, and then I can just rip them in half, and then I'll run a piece over this tape because when I pull that tape, it's going to lift some of that bark in a random way. And when this dries, it'll be hard and crispy, right? So that way, you know, you never know what's going to happen. When you peel the tape back, it creates its own natural kind of, you know, wounds and scars and so on. Dusty the cat, she's trying to get in on the action here. Then you'll see that some of it, you know, is sort of, there's a bit of funny anomalies like every now and again, but that's the way cedars are. You know, they have this peeling kind of strandy bark to them. This is actually this wet paper. I mean, it'll lighten up, but it looks kind of close to the color of what it'll be when it's painted. Okay. Okay, so now we're at the stage where we've laid on these bark strips. Okay, these are all cut, you know, it took about an hour, and I made it cut 100 of them or something, or 200 over an hour or two. But anyway, they've been laid on with matte medium or glued, you know, soaked in water. And you can see some of the pieces, you know, that kind of hang off and stuff, you know, which is what you see on these old cedars, right? Okay, so that's key. But so this is paper now, so I want to reseal this, and actually I want to smooth this out a little bit more. I don't want all the lines to show. I mean, I want some of them to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thin down some of this fiber paste. I'm going to paint over top of this just to kind of blend more of it together. But before I do that, I just want to just recap, you know, what I've done here. So if this is the cardboard tube, all right, so I laid on chunks of balsa wood to create the kind of bottom flare like that. Okay. And then I added the glass bead, but I only used the glass bead because I had it kicking around extra and I wanted to use it up because I have a newer tub which has a longer shelf life. Like, you don't want to let these things sit forever. I mean, you know, they do have a shelf life. I mean, imagine they're probably 5 or 6 years or maybe more. But anyway, when I laid on the glass bead, it left a real sort of bumpy texture, which turned out to be okay because it helps this paper to adhere better. And so, you know, you get a good solid seal. I mean, you know, like, because it's a lot of paper product, cardboard and foam or what have you. But so after I laid the glass bead on, then I laid on the paper layer with matte medium. So we have, you know, the cardboard layer here, then some balsa wood, and then the sealed texture paste, or in this case glass bead, and then this paper bark. So now I'm going to put another layer on of fiber paste. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of open thinner to it. And this helps increase the workable time, because this tends to dry quite quickly. And if you have a larger surface to work with, if you add like no more than 25% of this to any golden product, even Liquitex, it's compatible. You get a longer working time with it. You can add it to any paint by Golden or anything. That's why I love the Golden stuff, because it's just, well, it's the best there is, really, the best acrylic on the market, in my opinion. And it has such a broad and wide range that's just, you know, wonderful product for modelers. Okay. And for those of you that are wondering, this is about an 8 to 9, well, maybe 10-foot tree in 1/25 scale. 1/24 it's 8, but 1/25 there's a little bit of variation there. So it's around a 10-foot tree, give or take, between, you know, around 10 foot. And in O, it would be about well, let's see, let's put a ruler on it just for people's knowledge. So there's O scale. So you're looking at 15 feet across. So I've built O scale dioramas and built trees this big before, like old growth, like especially in California. You go down through the redwoods, it's very common for trees to be this large scale in O. So you can use this method for O scale as well. Okay, so there it is. It's all dried overnight. You can see some of the anomalies in the bark created by the paper. It's looking like a western red cedar, right? So I'm going to cover this now with fiber paste, but diluted, just to seal it up better and create a little more smoother and sort of texture on top of this bark paper as well. I'll just put about 15% in with this, just to keep it workable longer. I can smooth out some of that aggressive graininess that I don't really want there. Try to view this fiber paste as just a really thick paint that stays where you put it. And you can sculpt it actually as well. And it has a sort of stickiness to it. It's great stuff. Okay. You can also dip your brush in water as well, just to smooth it out more and thin it more as you're working with it. Notice how the bark strands are hanging off, just like the real cedars are like that. See? That's the paper working for you. When you're laying up the paper haphazardly and you're not overly concerned about, you know, stuff hanging off, because a lot of that little inconsistencies, things that we worry about, work in our favor. See, then you can just lay this stuff on thicker. To add more texture. Okay, so now that I'm at this stage, I've got most of the layer on the textured paste and created a lot of you know, the character that I wanted to build up, just with stroking and just getting into the zone, like I mentioned. Now, just to finish off, this is starting to kick. You know, this I would say that this texture paste, like, it's workable for, like, straight out of the tub. It's probably workable. Well, it starts to change. It starts to dry slowly, so which is to your advantage, because when you stroke it down, it creates more resistance, and you can see that it'll just start creating more texture and bark here. So I'm going to take this coarse fan brush, which is really an oil. Like any coarse brush like this is generally for oil paints, right? So what I'm going to do is take it dry, and then I'm just going to stroke it down just to finish up that bark texture. Okay. And it'll just add another dimension to the bark and all the you know, anomalies. And you see a lot of the paper, you see, underneath has caused this. See, this is my method of layering. You know, this is why we layer things, right? Okay. And then you can just work it down. You can just keep stroking it as it's drying. Eventually, it'll start to roll little balls as well on the texture, which is also what you want, because cedars are like that as well, or a lot of trees. You know, they sort of get these sort of little bumpy sort of nobulars. I'm really liking the way this tree's turning out. And you know, you just go ahead, you forge ahead with ideas. You try different products, and if it doesn't work out for you, you just cover them up or try something else. Okay. He's looking like an old western red cedar. Okay, so you know how trees will get, knots and funny bumps and burrows and stuff like that. They get old trees, they really take on a distinct character. They look prehistoric in age. This would have been an old tree, probably 1,200 years old, So what I do is I just take straight thick paste. Now I don't add any more thinner, right? Like the thinner at first to get a smooth coat on. And now if you want it to leave drag marks and bumps and other added texture, that's the beauty of this stuff. You can sculpt with it. It's like a sculptable paint. Okay, I'll just give you an example here. Watch. Just take some on the brush like this. And let's just take a look at this part down here. So you can build up. Okay, you can sculpt with it. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to enhance the holding wood splinter here. That's prominent on the butt of most trees that are felled, obviously. There's a little bit of a rough line here, but I want to enhance the thin splinter effect that happens once the tree is felled. And there's this splinter that's left. So I use this craft paper here and just drew a pencil line rough, but just as a guide, and then I just knifed away, pulling this way until I get this strip like this. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some texture paste, but more diluted, and I'm just going to lay it in like this. And it'll be soaked with texture paste or matte medium, so it should harden up pretty good. I'll give a little bit of that holding wood splinter that you see on trees that are cut at the butt like this. Okay? Okay, so this is how I apply the holding wood splinter on the bottom butt of the tree. So I take some Liquitex matte medium or golden, whichever you prefer. I paint the piece on both sides with straight matte medium. It's like a type of glue, really, right? Except that it dries flat and clear, but it's like an adhesive. And I take some of this fiber paste. This is a little bit on the bottom. It's fairly diluted. Added a bit of water to it. I'm just going to lay it in the back cut here, where the holding wood is. Okay. And I'm going to take this piece. It's nice and sticky now. I'm going to lay it in there like this with a knife. Just like this one. Now it's a little bit exaggerated, but I can clean that up later. Better to have a little bit more than not enough, in my opinion. And then I'll lay in a bit of this fiber paste just along the seam there. There you go. Okay, so I just want to show you some of the texture here. This is now finished. It's been white coated with light fast golden acrylics. This is all done basically with cardboard, a little bit of balsa underneath, but basically fiber paste and craft paper and so on. And the burrows are built up with fiber paste. And then this was the holding wood splinter. This is made up of craft paper, painted over with matte medium, and then whited out. So it's a good canvas now for paint. Okay. Okay, so I've been using all golden products pretty much up until now. And now that I have all the texture applied on this tree, I'm going to paint it with this titanium white golden products. This is a high flow acrylic. It's not super cheap paint, but it's the best paint there is. And this is the best white acrylic you can get. I mean, this covers even better than Tamiya does. But it's a little bit pricey, but boy, I'll tell you, it's super thin. Okay, just see that? But one coat, that's it. And it just whites it out beautifully. Okay, so I want to white this whole tree out because I want one big white canvas before I start painting it and weathering it and putting washes on it and so on. Okay, so high flow acrylics golden titanium white, light fastness. Okay, so this is getting close to the final stages of the sculpting of this old growth cedar log, as you can see here. I'll just talk to you about it in a second. You can see the different layers here, right? There's the cardboard tube underneath that balsa. Then there's the paper, and see the paper there creating a skin. There's the balsa, which you can peel away. So you got all these layers you can dig and cut away. Now here you can see I've been adding with fiber paste and mostly a palette knife. and some coarse brushes like this fan brush here, bristle oil base, which is really good for graining. Okay, make sure you get if you get one of these, you get a oil based one that are really stiff bristles. Okay. Anyway, and then you can see what you can do with the fiber paste, so you can build up these burrows, right? Like these old cedars were like this. If you look at videos of like logging ones of fallers and stuff, and you know when they walk the log and buck, you know, you can get some close-up views of what these trees really look like that we don't often see, right? Because they're out in the wild and they're up in the canopy. Okay, so you can see here the paper layers. See this? And then here's the balsa wood from the taper. So you're creating all these layers just like a real tree. This is how you model. Well, it's not the only way, I guess, but it's the way I like to do it. And I'll just show you on just a sketch here what that might look like. Okay. So you can see this is the cardboard tube, which in this case is 3 1/4 inch in diameter. The tube's about 1/4 inch thick. It's quite thick for big rolls of paper that they use for printing businesses and so on. So you can see this is the cardboard tube actually here. And then the balsa wood layer goes on, carpenter glue, right? You lay on those strips as I showed earlier. And then there's a texture seal. Now it doesn't matter, like you can seal this balsa wood and cardboard with a myriad of mediums. You can use diluted carpenter's glue, you can use matte medium, you can use another fiber paste, or even gesso, like white paint that artists use for canvases, works really well for a seal. Although it's absorbent. I like to put a seal, a water-resistant seal, like a Varathane or something, at this layer, just so that when you add all these water layers, it doesn't soak into the tube. I mean, it'll dry eventually because it's hollow, right? But you want to reflect as much water on your last layers if you can. It just helps the whole drying process. Even if there is a bit of warpage, that's fine, but in most cases there isn't, at least in my experience. And I've done many trees this way with celluclay as well, with lots of water in it, and there's been no warpage. And you can also do this over plastic plumbing pipe or large sonotubes or whatever. If you put it over plastic, though, it's best just to put masking tape around the plastic tube. Okay, like you can get the 2-inch tubes, or you can get them up to 5, 6, 7, large, any scale that you happen to desire. Okay, so then there's the texture seal, and then you can see there's the paper bark laid on, right? Which is like this, just strips of paper laid on, which seems insignificant because you cover a lot of it up, but you can see it here. See it through here? Like even if you left this, like this looks pretty good too. But you can actually go at it with a knife. And you can actually create damage to it and peel. See, you can peel some of it. All right, that's the whole method to my madness for modeling, a tree like this. And then on top of the paper, you can see the fiber paste, where I've been re-sculpting this, like these burrows and just other kind of, see, like that, and then texturing like this, and then running the edge of the knife like this. Like this is really beautiful stuff. That's what I mean with this fiber. I just love this stuff for sculpting, especially this type of model. Okay, and then once this is done, you don't really need to seal this. I might seal it with, I'll show you. I really like this here, sorry, this golden titanium white light fastness. Okay, it's super thin, but man, does it ever cover. And once again, for those of you that are in the hobby that like to do this sort of thing, make sure you check out the art supply stores. Like, don't hobble yourself, Most hobby shops don't even think of this stuff. So And this titanium white is just it's so thin, like this won't uh, soften up these sharp edges. Like it's so thin, like you brush it on. You can airbrush it or put it on with a brush, and it'll just seal everything nice and white. So you have a nice white canvas to paint your tree, to begin painting, which in my case I'll use acrylics, okay? Okay, so the tree log here, in this case, has been already painted with a lot of raw umber and browns, and some of the red brown that you already see there is the red enamel base coat over the whiteout, right? Because like this, I like to seal it white canvas, and then I sprayed enamel spray balm and let it dry for a week at least. Actually, in this case, it was weeks. And then you can see I'm starting to lay on the Winsor & Newton burnt sienna to get the more reddish hue to the tree, okay? Alright, that'll eventually dry out flat, and if it doesn't, I can flat coat it, doesn't really matter. So, now, this is all acrylic. Well, there was enamel, then acrylics over top, flat Tamiya. This is all Tamiya. So, this is Winsor & Newton Artist Oil Color. This is the best quality there is. Well, there's arguably it is. There's other good oils out there too, but I've been using Winsor & Newton as far as I can remember, and they're as good as any oil paint on the market. So this is just odorless mineral spirits. A lot of times I'll just take it, like in this case, I'm not going to extract the oil from it because I don't care how long it takes to dry, actually. With like in this case, if I want it to dry faster, the oil, then I'll spread this out on a piece of cardboard and let the oil leach out. But I don't really care. I'm just going to take it straight from the tube like this, okay? And I'm just going to stab some on like that. And then I'm going to take some mineral spirits and I'm just going to blend it in like that, see? And I'm going to create like a nice glaze or transparent filter. This is the beauty of oils. Oils are the true transparent paint. Acrylic by nature is not transparent at all. It's opaque, okay? But you won't get the transparency, see that, like you will unless you use oils. And you can use the oils right over top of flat acrylics or whatever, okay? So that's what I'll do. I was going to give the whole tree a basic do-over of Winsor & Newton burnt sienna. Okay. See the color, the shade, the filter there, see? We're starting to get to that look, right? That's what we want.